3,000 years ago, an empire of warriors and diplomats ruled Anatolia, then vanished without a trace. They were the Hittites, a Bronze Age superpower whose name was nearly erased from history, only whispered in the forgotten corners of the Bible. All they left behind were silent witnesses, artifacts of stone and clay, waiting to tell their story. By the end of this journey, you will understand how 25 of these mysterious objects completely rewrote the history books, forcing scholars to confront a civilization far more sophisticated than anyone dared to believe. We will examine a peace treaty that ended an epic war, decipher curses inscribed on animal livers, and question the purpose of a strange green stone that fell from the sky. What do you believe is the most compelling clue a lost civilization can leave behind? The first clue lies at the very gates of their forgotten capital. Carved from mountains of living rock, two colossal sphinxes watch over the entrance to Hattusa with an eternal, unnerving stillness. These are not the serene Egyptian sphinxes you might picture. These creatures are a powerful fusion of lion, eagle, and human, their massive bodies radiating a raw, protective power. To stand before them is to feel the weight of an empire's ambition, a statement carved in stone for any approaching visitor or enemy. The sheer scale is the first mystery. How did Bronze Age engineers without modern machinery quarry, transport, and erect these multi-ton sentinels? Their discovery by archaeologists in the late 19th century was a shock to the system, a definitive declaration that a major, sophisticated power had once thrived here in the highlands of Turkey. But were they just impressive decorations, symbols of royal authority meant to intimidate? Or did the Hittites believe these hybrid beings possessed a real, magical power to ward off evil spirits and chaos from their sacred city? Their faces, once painted in vivid colors now lost to time, would have stared down with a terrifying lifelike presence. This gate was more than an entrance, it was a barrier between the ordered world of the Hittite Empire and the unknown wilderness beyond, guarded by creatures from myth. The sphinxes announced that you are now entering a realm of immense power, a place where the human and the divine intersected. They are the perfect starting point because they represent the Hittite genius for blending overwhelming physical strength with a deep, mystical worldview. They tell us that to understand this empire, we must look beyond the stone and see the belief system that gave it life. But what happens when two such empires, both guarded by their own stone giants, finally collide? The answer is not found in a ruined battlefield, but pressed into a small, sun-baked tablet of clay. This is the Treaty of Kadesh, and it is arguably the single most important diplomatic document ever discovered. Inscribed in the intricate wedge-shaped script known as cuneiform, this tablet records a staggering reality, a peace agreement forged in the 13th century BC between the Hittite great king Hattusa III and the Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses II. These were not minor kingdoms, they were the superpowers of the Bronze Age, and they had just fought one of the largest chariot battles in history at Kadesh. Thousands would have died in the clash, with both sides claiming victory. Yet here, in this careful script, they chose not eternal war, but a carefully negotiated peace. The terms are astonishingly modern, a mutual defense pact where each king pledged to come to the other's aid if attacked by a third party, and to extradite political refugees who fled across their borders. They even called each other brother. This shifts our entire understanding of ancient warfare. It shows us that for the Hittites, military might was not an end in itself, but a tool to secure a stable, prosperous peace. The true mystery here is not the treaty's existence, but the mindset it reveals. Why would Ramesses II, a pharaoh who immortalized his supposed victory at Kadesh across temple walls in Egypt, agree to such equal terms with a rival? The answer lies in recognizing Hittite strength. The Hittite Empire, through shrewd diplomacy and formidable organization, had proven itself an undeniable equal. This clay tablet is a silent witness to a profound moment when two colossal egos and two mighty armies stepped back from the brink and chose a shared future over mutual destruction. It redefines the Hittites not merely as conquerors, but as master statesmen who understood that the most lasting victories are sometimes won at the negotiating table. This sophisticated approach to power would echo through their culture, even into their most private and terrifying rituals. Yet for all their skill in statecraft, the Hittites knew their empire ultimately rested on a foundation of faith. To witness this belief carved into the very bones of the earth, you must leave the city gates and walk into the surrounding hills. There, hidden within a natural rock chamber, lies Yazilikaya, the inscribed rock, an open-air sanctuary that feels less like a man-made temple and more like a cathedral formed by the gods themselves. Imagine two great limestone crevices open to the sky, their walls covered with a silent stone procession. Over 90 figures march across the rock face, a grand assembly of the entire Hittite pantheon frozen in an eternal ceremony. You see gods with conical hats, goddesses in long robes, animals and mythical creatures, all moving with a rhythmic purpose toward the head of the chamber. The scale is humbling, the artistry breathtaking, but the central mystery pulls your gaze to the far end. There, two deities stand apart, larger than all the rest. One is a powerful male figure, often identified as Teshub, the storm god, standing upon the bowed figures of mountain gods. Opposite him is a regal female, the sun goddess Hebat, standing upon a lioness. Their meeting feels like the climax of the entire cosmic parade. But what are we witnessing? Was this the sacred stage for the most important religious festival of the year? Perhaps a New Year celebration where the king, as the god's mortal representative, would perform rituals to ensure the cycle of seasons and the fertility of the land. Or was this even more profound, the site of royal coronations, where a new Hittite king was symbolically presented to the divine assembly and received his mandate to rule from Teshub and Hebat themselves? The sanctuary has no roof because the ceremony was held under the open sky, connecting the rituals directly to the heavens. The procession may represent the orderly universe the Hittites sought to maintain, a universe where human kings and storm gods were partners in holding chaos at bay. Yazilikaya is not just a list of gods, it is a theological map of the Hittite cosmos, showing us that their politics, their wars, and their treaties were all viewed as part of a sacred order maintained through precise and powerful rituals. This deep connection to the divine would require a language potent enough to communicate with it, a language they believed they could read in the most unexpected of places. But to truly command that sacred order, a king needed more than ritual. He needed the tangible, awe-inspiring authority of a protector. This brings us to a single, unforgettable image carved into the stone of the king's gate at Hattusa. Here, a towering figure stands in stark relief, a being of pure, formidable power. He wears the short tunic of a warrior and the iconic pointed helmet of the Hittite military elite, a sword at his waist and a battle axe held firmly in his right hand. In his left, he grips a curious symbol, a staff ending in a loop which scholars believe represents the hieroglyph for life itself. This is no ordinary soldier. His size, his central placement guarding the very entrance to the royal quarter, and his commanding presence all scream of the divine. For over a century, this figure has been the subject of a fierce and fascinating debate. Who or what is he? The most straightforward interpretation is that this is a depiction of the Hittite war god, a divine sentinel placed to protect the king and the city from any earthly or supernatural threat. He is the embodiment of martial strength, a permanent divine guard. Yet another compelling theory suggests this is not a god at all, but the Hittite king himself portrayed in a deified state. The Hittite rulers were seen as the chief priests and earthly deputies of the gods, and in death, some were even worshipped as deities. This carving could be a monumental statement of that belief, showing the king transformed into an eternal, divine protector of his own realm, forever watching over the gate that bore his name. A third possibility exists that he is a protector spirit, a supernatural being specifically tasked with guarding sacred thresholds. The mystery is deepened by his unique artistic style. Unlike the detailed processional figures at Yazilikaya, the King's Gate warrior is rendered with a powerful, almost abstract simplicity. The lines are bold and deep, designed to be seen from a distance, casting dramatic shadows that would make the figure seem to move in the shifting sunlight. This wasn't subtle art for contemplation, it was public propaganda in stone, a visual declaration meant to be understood by everyone, from visiting ambassadors to the common laborer. It communicated a core Hittite ideology that the king's military power was inseparable from divine sanction, that the army was an instrument of the gods, and that the safety of the state was guaranteed by forces both human and supernatural. This one relief fundamentally shaped how we see the Hittite mindset, a culture where the boundary between the royal palace and the temple, between the commander and the deity, was not just blurred, it was deliberately erased. The divine protector at the gate watched over ceremonies of immense power, but what did those sacred rituals actually look like? For a vivid glimpse into the living, breathing heart of early Hittite worship, we must turn to a masterpiece of clay and color, the Inandic vase. Discovered not in the grand capital but at a provincial site, this vessel stands as a stunning narrative frozen in time. Crafted during the old Hittite period, it is not a simple pot but a sculpted and painted storybook, its surface divided into 4 detailed bands of relief that spiral around its body. The scenes are bustling with life, a crowded tableau of figures engaged in what is clearly a profound religious event. We see musicians playing lyres, priests and priestesses carrying offerings, and animals being led to what appears to be an altar. The level of detail is extraordinary, from the folds of clothing to the expressions on the faces, capturing a moment of communal celebration and devotion. Yet, for all its clarity of action, the central mystery of the vase remains frustratingly just out of reach. What specific ceremony is this? Scholars have debated for decades. One dominant theory suggests we are witnessing the ritual of the sacred marriage, a powerful act where the union of a king and a priestess, representing a god and goddess, was believed to renew the fertility of the land and ensure the favor of the gods for another year. The scenes of offering and music would fit perfectly as part of such a lavish, state-sponsored festival. Another interpretation views it as a more general New Year celebration, a grand procession and sacrifice to mark the cyclical rebirth of nature. A third possibility is that it illustrates a specific mythological tale, now lost to us, that was fundamental to Hittite belief. The vase provides invaluable insight precisely because it is so cryptic. It offers a snapshot of the choreography of faith without providing the script. It shows us that Hittite religion was not a somber, private affair, but a vibrant, communal performance involving music, dance, and shared sacrifice. This cult vessel was likely used to hold a sacred liquid, perhaps wine or a ritual libation, during the very ceremonies it depicts, making the object an active participant in the worship. The Inandic vase pulls back the curtain, allowing us to see the human dimension behind the grand stone carvings of gods and kings. It reminds us that the Hittite cosmic order was maintained not just by edicts and treaties, but by the rhythmic beat of a lyre, the scent of burning offerings, and the collective hope of a people performing their sacred duties. This tangible connection to ritual life makes the silence of their written records on such topics all the more poignant, and the next discovery all the more critical to unlocking what they truly believed. The vibrant scenes on the Inandic vase show us a people in motion, but to hear their voices, we must learn to read their words. That crucial key arrived in the form of a stoic guardian, the Bogaskari Sphinx. This magnificent creature, carved from dark basalt, once watched over the gates of Hattusa much like its larger counterparts. But its true value lies not in its imposing form, but in the lines of text carefully inscribed across its chest and wings. This is a Luwian hieroglyphic inscription, a writing system used across Anatolia that long baffled scholars. The Sphinx itself became a central character in a modern drama of discovery and diplomacy. Unearthed by German archaeologists in the early 20th century, it was taken to Berlin as part of a permitted division of finds, a common practice of the era. For decades, it resided in a museum far from its homeland, a silent exile. Yet, as modern Turkey asserted its cultural heritage, a long campaign for its return began. In 2011, after nearly a century abroad, the Sphinx finally made the journey home, a powerful symbol of repatriation and the enduring connection between artifacts and the lands that created them. Its physical return was a victory, but the linguistic secrets it carried had already changed history. The lengthy inscription on its body provided a Rosetta Stone moment for Anatolian studies. By comparing the hieroglyphic signs with known Hittite cuneiform, scholars slowly began to crack the code. They could now read the public proclamations carved on monuments and seals. The Bogoskuri Sphinx's text proudly records the deeds of a Hittite king, likely Suppiluliuma II, the empire's last great ruler. It speaks of military campaigns and construction projects, a royal resume meant for eternity. Yet, frustratingly, sections of the text are worn or broken. Key verbs and place names are missing, leaving tantalizing gaps in the narrative. What specific victory is he boasting about? Which rebellious region did he pacify? These lacunae are like missing chapters from the empire's final act. The very artifact that gave us the language simultaneously holds back parts of its story, reminding us that every decipherment is a partial one. This Sphinx, therefore, embodies a dual mystery. It is an object of modern cultural reclamation and an ancient puzzle box whose final message we are still piecing together. It gave us the voice of the Hittites, but that voice still whispers fragments, urging us to listen more closely to the other texts it helped us unlock. The power of the Hittite king was proclaimed in stone and script, but its origins may lie in a far older, more mysterious symbol of authority. Deep in the Turkish heartland, at a site called Alokahöryük, archaeologists uncovered 13 royal tombs dating to a time before the Hittite Empire even existed, a period we call the Early Bronze Age. Inside, they found treasures that defy simple explanation, a collection of objects now known as the Alokahöryük standards. These are not weapons or jewelry in the ordinary sense. They are stunning, intricate sculptures of bronze and gold, formed into open circles or discs adorned with breathtaking figures. Imagine a ring, but one meant to be mounted on a pole. At its center, a powerful bull or a graceful, leaping stag stands proudly, surrounded by smaller geometric patterns and animal figures that seem to orbit the central creature like planets around a sun. The craftsmanship is astonishing, a fusion of raw metal and delicate artistry that speaks of a highly sophisticated culture with master metalworkers. But from the moment of their discovery, these standards posed a riddle that continues to echo. What were they for? Their very name, standards, is a guess, a placeholder for a function we have lost. One compelling theory is that they were religious symbols, perhaps representations of a sun god or a mother goddess, with the central animal acting as a divine emblem. They could have been carried aloft in sacred processions, much like religious banners, to invoke the protection and favor of the deities they depicted. Another idea suggests they were not for ceremonies at all, but for war and prestige. They might have been mounted on the chariots of chieftains or kings, gleaming symbols of rank and power that would catch the sun on the battlefield, dazzling friends and foes alike. A third possibility is even more intriguing, that they were royal funerary standards, objects created specifically to accompany these pre-Hittite rulers into the afterlife, serving as their badge of office in the next world. This last theory connects them directly to the tombs in which they were found, silent companions for eternity. The mystery deepens when we realize these artifacts belong to the Hattusa culture, the very people the Hittites later conquered and absorbed. In these stunning discs, we might be seeing the raw cultural material that the rising Hittite civilization would later refine and make its own, the proto-Hittite seeds from which an imperial iconography would grow. They represent a bridge between a forgotten past and a historical empire, a dazzling question mark cast in metal. Their silent, symbolic language hints at a world of belief and power that the Hittites inherited, reminding us that even the greatest empires are built upon older, mysterious foundations. High in the wind-swept mountains of western Turkey, far from the Hittite heartland, a lone sentinel has stood watch for over 3,000 years. Carved directly into the living rock face of the Karabal Pass, this is the relief of a warrior king, a monument of such imposing presence that it controlled not just a physical space, but the very narrative of history for centuries. The figure strides forward with purpose, his body rendered in a powerful, simplified form. He grips a long spear in one hand and a bow slung over his shoulder, his attire a clear statement of identity, the distinctive pointed helmet and short tunic of a Hittite military commander. Beside him, a panel of Luwian hieroglyphs proclaims his deeds, a silent speech carved in stone. Yet, for most of recorded history, no one knew his name or his people. Ancient Greek travelers, including the historian Herodotus, passed through this strategic mountain pass and saw the carving. They misinterpreted it entirely, believing it depicted an Egyptian pharaoh or even a legendary Amazon warrior. This misidentification persisted for millennia, a ghost from a forgotten empire mistaken for a figure from a more familiar tale. The true breakthrough came in the late 19th century when the code of Luwian hieroglyphs began to crack. Scholars could finally read the inscription, revealing this to be a monument of Tarkasnawa, king of Mera, a powerful vassal ruler within the Hittite sphere. This was not just a correction in a catalogue, it was a seismic shift in the historical map. The Karabal relief proved the Hittite Empire's political and cultural influence stretched hundreds of kilometers farther west than anyone had previously believed, deep into the Aegean hinterlands. This solitary king, guarding a vital trade and military route, was a permanent imperial agent, a declaration in rock that this territory was under the protection and authority of the Hittite world order. His long misidentification speaks volumes. It shows how completely an empire can vanish, its heroes becoming blank slates for later cultures to project their own stories upon. His reclamation rewrites the borders of the Bronze Age, proving that Hittite power was projected not only through armies and treaties, but through these enduring symbols of sovereignty placed in the very landscape itself. The solitary king at Karabal proclaimed Hittite power in stone, but the real machinery of empire ran on clay. In the quiet village of Ortakuri, a farmer's plow struck not rock, but a different kind of history, unearthing a trove that would shatter our understanding of Hittite geography. This was Shapanuva, and from its ground came a flood of over 3,000 clay tablets, an administrative avalanche that spoke of a bustling, powerful city. This was no provincial outpost. The tablets, written in the familiar wedge-shaped cuneiform, revealed Shapanuva as a second capital, a fully operational royal seat operating alongside Hattusa. Imagine the surprise. For decades, Hattusa was seen as the undisputed, singular heart of the empire. Now we had proof of a dual capital system, a deliberate and sophisticated division of imperial labor. The tablets from Shapanuva are the day-to-day paperwork of a superpower. They record grain shipments, troop movements, and diplomatic correspondence, painting a picture of a city that managed the northern and eastern frontiers of the empire. But mixed with these mundane orders are far more haunting documents. Some tablets detail elaborate rituals to combat a terrifying, invisible enemy, a devastating plague that was sweeping through the population. You can almost feel the desperation in the precise instructions for the priests, a society trying to fight a biological crisis with spiritual weapons. This raises a profound strategic mystery. Why did the Hittites need two capitals? One theory is purely practical. Hattusa, located in the Central Highlands, could be remote and harsh in winter. Chattanooga, in a more temperate valley, may have served as a seasonal royal residence, a place where the king and his court could govern more comfortably during the colder months. Another, more compelling idea is that it was a matter of security and control. By establishing a major administrative hub further east, closer to potential trouble spots like the Casca tribes, the Hittite king could respond to threats more quickly and project authority more directly over volatile regions. The archive itself suggests a sudden, urgent importance. The sheer volume of tablets indicates a massive, concentrated bureaucratic effort. Was Chattanooga always a secondary capital, or was its role dramatically elevated during a specific crisis, perhaps during the very plague its tablets describe, as a way to isolate the court or manage a buckling empire? The Chattanooga archive does not just add a new city to the map, it reveals the Hittite state as a complex, adaptive organism, capable of decentralizing its immense power to survive. It shows us an empire thinking on two fronts at once, governing from two hearts, a strategy of resilience written in lines of damp clay, dried and fired for eternity. The meticulous bureaucracy of Chattanooga managed an empire, but for decisions of ultimate consequence, the Hittite king turned to a far more ancient and mystical source. Hidden among the tablets and administrative records, archaeologists found something utterly unexpected: small, hand-sized models of sheep livers, meticulously crafted from clay. These are not anatomical studies, they are maps of the divine will. Each model is covered in a grid of intricate markings, dividing the liver's surface into dozens of precise zones, each labeled with cuneiform signs. To the Hittites, the liver was not just an organ, it was the seat of the soul and the mirror of the cosmos. They practiced hepatoscopy, the art of reading the gods' messages in the entrails of a sacrificed animal. Before any major state decision, whether to launch a war, plant the harvest, or diagnose an illness, a priest would sacrifice a sheep. He would then carefully examine the fresh liver, comparing its every bump, color, and marking to one of these clay models. The models served as the reference manual, the celestial dictionary. A spot or a protrusion in a specific zone, labeled perhaps for the storm god or the sun goddess, carried a specific meaning, a yes or no, a warning or an affirmation from that particular deity. The process was a terrifyingly precise science of the unseen. Imagine the pressure on that priest, with the king and his entire court waiting in silence as he scrutinized the warm, glistening organ under the open sky, searching for a sign that would determine the fate of thousands. A strange discoloration in the region of the enemy might advise against battle. An unusually shaped lobe in the zone of fertility could signal the perfect time to sow seeds. This practice reveals a worldview where nothing happened by mere chance. Every event on earth was a direct reflection of the mood and machinations of the gods. The liver models show us that Hittite rationality was not separate from their spirituality. It was channeled through it. They sought order and prediction in the most chaotic of places, believing that with the right key, even the internal viscera of a sheep could reveal the clear, commanding language of the divine. It was a system that combined keen observation with profound faith, an attempt to impose a readable logic on the terrifying uncertainty of fate. The divine messages read in a sheep's liver required a vessel worthy of the gods themselves. From the royal tombs at Hattusa comes an object of breathtaking luxury and profound ambiguity, the silver hand of God. Crafted from a single sheet of hammered silver, it is a life-sized clenched fist, fingers curled tightly as if holding an invisible weapon or perhaps the very essence of a sacred vow. Every knuckle and tendon is rendered with an almost anatomical precision, a testament to a metalworking skill that rivaled any in the ancient world. This was no ordinary cup, it was a rhyton, a ceremonial drinking vessel used for pouring libations, offerings of wine or oil to the deities. To hold it, you would tip the liquid from the open wrist, watching it flow as if from the very limb of a god. But which god? The fist is powerful, masculine, devoid of the delicate symbols that might identify a specific deity. It could represent the hand of the mighty storm god Teshub, clenched around a bolt of lightning, or perhaps the hand of a sun god pouring forth the light of day. Its very anonymity is the core of its mystery. Scholars are drawn to one particularly compelling theory, that this rite was not for general worship, but for a specific, solemn act, the swearing of oaths. In the Hittite world, treaties and solemn promises were sealed with elaborate rituals, often involving libations and invocations to the gods as witnesses. Imagine a Hittite king and a foreign ambassador standing before an altar, as a priest poured a stream of wine from this silver fist onto the ground, each drop a symbolic offering that bound the agreement in the sight of heaven. To break an oath sworn over such a vessel would be to defy the god whose hand literally poured out the pact. The discovery of this object shattered the old perception of the Hittites as purely austere warriors. Here was evidence of an elite culture that valued stunning artistry and theatrical ritual in equal measure, a civilization that could forge empires with iron and seal them with silver. The silver fist poured libations for pacts sealed by the gods, but how could a king prove his word was divine? He pressed his authority into clay with a small, intricately carved cylinder of stone. Among the most famous of these royal signatures is the Tiskuik seal, a mesmerizing object carved from deep black hematite. When rolled across wet clay, it leaves a continuous frieze of exquisite detail, a miniature world where Hittite deities stand in solemn procession. We see the familiar storm god with his lightning bolts, the sun goddess in her regal posture, all rendered with a fluid, almost lyrical grace. The style is what first catches the expert eye. It carries a distinct echo of Mesopotamian artistry, the kind seen in seals from Babylon or Assyria. This artistic kinship is the seal's first layer of intrigue, suggesting a vibrant exchange of ideas and craftsmen between the great empires of the Bronze Age. It could be powerful evidence of a connected ancient world, where symbols of power traveled along trade routes as freely as spices or tin. But the seal's journey to the modern museum case is a shadowy tale that complicates everything. It carries the name of a 19th-century Polish collector, Count Mikhail Tiskuik, who acquired it from the notoriously murky antiquities market of his time. There were no careful archaeological records, no documented excavation site. It simply appeared, a masterpiece without a proven past. This lack of clear provenance ignited a firestorm of debate that still smolders today. Is the Tiskuik seal a genuine treasure from a Hittite royal workshop, or is it one of the most sophisticated forgeries ever created? The arguments on both sides are compelling. Those who believe it is real point to the flawless understanding of Hittite iconography, the precise carving technique achievable only with period-appropriate tools, and the wear patterns that suggest it was actually used rolled across clay countless times. They see it as a crowning achievement of Hittite glyptic art. The skeptics, however, focus on that very perfection and its stylistic echoes. Could a forger, armed with the newly published sketches of Hittite reliefs from archaeologists in the late 1800s, have crafted this piece to appeal to wealthy collectors eager for a piece of the exotic Hittite mystery? The antiquities market of that era was rife with such brilliant fakes. The seal's story forces us to confront an uncomfortable reality in archaeology, that not every beautiful object that fits our narrative is true. Its authenticity remains officially unproven, suspended in a scholarly limbo. This small stone cylinder, therefore, holds a double mystery. It asks us to decipher not only an ancient king's message, but the very truth of its own existence. It stands as a permanent caution, reminding us that the past can be forged as well as found, and that the desire to hold history in our hands can sometimes cloud our ability to see it clearly. While kings sealed treaties and priests read divine will in livers, the lifeblood of the Hittite world flowed from a more tangible source, water. In a quiet, fertile plain near the shores of Lake Bashir, they built a monument not to conquest but to the elemental force of springs themselves. The Eflatunpınar monument is a breathtaking fusion of architecture and nature, a massive stone wall built directly into a hillside where fresh, cold water bubbles up from the earth. The wall is alive with carvings, a vertical tapestry of deities emerging from the rock. Central to the composition are the imposing figures of mountain gods, their bodies formed from stacked, rounded forms like peaks, their arms raised in a gesture of support or blessing. Flanking them are winged genii, hybrid creatures with the bodies of men and the heads of eagles or lions, and below, the great sun goddess and storm god stand in their majestic repose. The entire scene is reflected in the crystal-clear pool that gathers at its base, creating a shimmering, doubled world where stone and water, image and reflection become one. The setting is serene, almost idyllic, a stark contrast to the martial imagery of city gates, but this tranquility masks a profound and puzzling purpose. Why construct such a monumental, labor-intensive facade here at this remote spring? One compelling theory sees Eflatunpınar as a sacred Huwasi stone, a focal point for the worship of water deities. The Hittites believed springs and rivers were inhabited by powerful spirits, and this monument could have been a grand altar where offerings were made directly into the pool, thanking the gods for the gift of life-giving water and ensuring its continued flow. The mountain gods in the relief literally hold up the heavens, suggesting the monument celebrated the entire natural cycle from peak to spring. Yet, the scale and formality hint at something more than a local shrine. Could this have been an elaborate piece of royal propaganda carved into the landscape? By claiming this potent natural site and adorning it with the official pantheon, a Hittite king would symbolically demonstrate his role as the intermediary between the people and the forces of nature, the guarantor of fertility and order. The water flowing from the monument wasn't just water, it was a divine blessing channeled through the king's authority. The genius of Eflatunpınar is its ambiguity. It refuses to be just one thing. It is a religious site, a political statement, and a work of art all at once, reminding us that for the Hittites, controlling water meant controlling life itself, and such power was always framed as a sacred covenant between the ruler, the people, and the earth. The power of an empire was sealed with a tiny, intricate stamp. Across the Hittite world, officials and merchants carried their authority not in a written document, but in a small, personal amulet, a seal. These were masterpieces of miniature art carved from stone or metal, often shaped like scarabs or cylinders. When pressed into a soft lump of clay called a bulla, they left a unique official mark, a signature in relief. This clay blob would then be used to secure the strings tied around a papyrus scroll or to seal the lid of a storage jar, a tamper-proof guarantee. If the clay was broken, you knew the message had been read or the goods had been tampered with. It was a simple, brilliant system of ancient security. But the true treasure of these seals is the script that rings their edges or fills their central field, the elegant pictorial writing known as Luwian hieroglyphs. These are not the Egyptian symbols you might think of. They are a uniquely Anatolian creation, a flowing script of birds, hands, eyes, and geometric shapes, each representing a syllable or a whole word. For centuries after the empire fell, this script was utterly silent, a beautiful but impenetrable code. The seals themselves became the key to breaking it. Because they were so numerous and often bore both hieroglyphic inscriptions and images of gods or kings, scholars could start to match repeated symbols with known royal names and titles from cuneiform texts. A recurring combination of signs on a seal impression, found alongside the image of a storm god, might be matched to the name of a Hittite king known from a treaty. Slowly, painstakingly, the language began to speak. Yet for every name deciphered, a dozen more remain hidden in plain sight. Thousands of these clay bulli, often broken or worn, sit in museum drawers, their tiny hieroglyphic loops and lines holding secrets we can almost but not quite read. Each one represents a person, a mayor, a priest, a tax collector, or a merchant whose name and city are now just a faint impression in baked mud. Who was the official from the lost city of Paha? What trade route did the merchant with the seal of the running stag control? These unread seals are ghostly fragments of a vast administrative network, a bureaucracy of faces we can no longer name. They remind us that cracking the code of a royal monument is one thing, but hearing the whispers of ordinary governance is another challenge entirely. The hieroglyphic seals show us an empire that ran on trust verified by clay, and they hold the mundane, intimate records of its daily life, still waiting for their final decipherment. The silent seals of bureaucrats give way to a far more vibrant spectacle on the walls of another clay masterpiece. Unearthed near Ankara, the Bittik vase stands as a companion piece to the Inandic vase, yet it sings a different, more complex hymn to Hittite life. This is not a simple storage jar, but a monumental work of narrative art, its entire surface alive with a painted procession of figures moving with a solemn, rhythmic grace. The colors, even after 3 millennia, hint at their original brilliance, ochres and blacks defining robes and features against the pale clay. The procession is meticulously ordered, a parade of men and women, some carrying vessels, others playing instruments, all advancing toward a central, focal scene. The level of detail is staggering, from the intricate patterns on their garments to the careful rendering of their postures, each figure playing a specific role in this silent ceremony. But the moment you try to pin down exactly what you are seeing, the clarity dissolves into mystery. Who are these elegant participants? The most heated debate swirls around their identities. Some scholars argue these are not humans at all, but deities. The serene expressions, the stylized poses, and the ritualistic objects they carry could point to a gathering of the gods, perhaps a divine assembly similar to the one carved in stone at Yazilikaya, but rendered here in a more intimate, painterly form. Others see the hallmarks of a very human royal event. The figures wear elaborate, possibly ceremonial clothing, and the central scene might depict a king and queen receiving offerings or presiding over a sacred rite. This could be a snapshot of an actual coronation, a royal wedding, or a state religious festival, frozen in time by the painter's brush. A third, fascinating possibility exists, that it shows priestly officiants impersonating gods during a major public performance, a blurring of the line between the mortal and the divine that was central to Hittite state religion. The Bittik vase's story becomes clearer when held beside its cousin, the Inandic vase. Both depict processions, but their tones differ. The Inandic scenes feel more active, more like the bustling preparation for a sacrifice, with animals and a palpable sense of movement. The Bittik vase feels more stately, more formal, like the climax of the ceremony itself. They could be illustrating different acts of the same grand ritual, or entirely different events from the Hittite ceremonial calendar. This magnificent vessel is a window, but the glass is frosted. It provides our most vivid, colorful glimpse into the pageantry that structured Hittite society, the elaborate dances of power and faith that bound the community together. It shows us the choreography of their public life, yet refuses to hand us the program, leaving us to wonder if we are watching a meeting of the gods or the finest performance of the king's court. Far from the ceremonial courts, the authority of a Hittite king was projected onto the very skin of the earth. Along a vital trade route that snaked through the Cilician Gates, a natural mountain pass connecting the Anatolian plateau to the Mediterranean, two faces stare out from a limestone cliff. These are the Circuli rock reliefs, and they transform a journey into an audience with empire. On one panel, a life-sized figure stands in the familiar royal pose, one arm raised, gripping a spear or a staff of authority. He wears the pointed helmet and carries the curved sword, the litus, that are the unmistakable badges of Hittite kingship. The carving is weathered but confident, a permanent royal presence overlooking the comings and goings of merchants, soldiers, and diplomats. The second panel, just a short distance away, bears no image, only a large, beautifully carved field of Luwian hieroglyphs, a silent proclamation in stone. For decades, these reliefs were fascinating but anonymous, just another king by the roadside. Then, epigraphers made a breakthrough. The hieroglyphic inscription was painstakingly deciphered, and within its lines they found a name, Muwatalli II. This was no ordinary ruler. This was the very Hittite great king who fought the pharaoh Ramesses II to a standstill at the epic Battle of Kadesh. Suddenly, this weathered figure gained a profound historical identity. He was the architect of the empire's greatest military confrontation, the man whose treaty would later be pressed into clay. His presence here, carved into a cliff face hundreds of kilometers from Hattusa, is a statement of breathtaking scale. But why place his portrait here of all places? The location is the key to the mystery. The Cilician gates were not just a road, they were the main artery for all trade and military movement between central Anatolia and the rich ports of Syria and the Levant. By carving his image here, Muwatalli was doing something brilliantly strategic. He was turning geography into propaganda. Every caravan that passed, every foreign envoy traveling to the capital, every Hittite regiment marching south would see their king's stern gaze upon them. It was a territorial marker, yes, a way of saying this crucial route is under the protection and control of the Hittite crown, but it was likely more. Could this have been a commemorative site marking a specific triumphant campaign Muwatalli led through these very gates? Or was it a kind of permanent royal checkpoint, a symbolic assertion that the king's authority extended to the farthest, most turbulent edges of his realm? The twin nature of the monument adds layers. The image asserts power visually to all who pass, while the inscription communicates the specifics of that power to those who can read the sacred script. The circular reliefs show us an empire that understood the psychology of space, that knew true control meant imprinting the ruler's face onto the landscape itself, making the mountains themselves speak his name. Muwatalli's stern gaze from the cliffside gave way to a far more enigmatic presence in the very heart of his capital. Within the sacred courtyard of the great temple at Hattusa, a single, silent object rests, defying all easy explanation. This is the Hattusa green stone, a roughly cube-shaped block of polished nephrite, a beautiful, translucent green mineral that feels cool and impossibly smooth to the touch. Its very material is the first clue to its strangeness. Nephrite of this quality is not native to the Anatolian highlands. It is a stone of distant mountains, possibly sourced from hundreds of miles away, making its journey to Hattusa an expensive and deliberate undertaking. This was no ordinary building stone. Placed prominently within the temple complex, the very center of Hittite religious power, it clearly held profound significance. Yet from the moment of its discovery, it has whispered a single, persistent question: what in the world was it for? The stone offers no carvings, no inscriptions, no handles, no wear marks. It is a perfect, abstract presence. One compelling theory suggests it was an aniconic cult object. In many ancient religions, the divine was sometimes represented not by a statue with a human face, but by a pure, unworked form, a stone or a pillar believed to be imbued with the spirit of a god. This green cube, shimmering in the temple light, could have been seen as the physical vessel for a deity, perhaps a chthonic earth god or a vegetation spirit, its color symbolizing life and fertility. Its lack of features would have made the divine presence feel more universal, more mysterious. Another practical idea is that it served as a plinth, a base upon which a cult statue of a god made of wood or precious metal would have been placed. The statue is long gone, looted or decayed, leaving only its enigmatic pedestal behind. But the most tantalizing theory connects it to the heavens. Could this smooth green stone be a sacred meteorite, a beetleus, an object that literally fell from the sky? Many cultures, including the Hittites, venerated such celestial stones as direct gifts from the gods, unmediated pieces of divine power. The effort to polish and shape it would not diminish its sacred origin, but would honor it, framing the cosmic gift within a human-made form. Its placement in the great temple, where the king performed his most important rituals, suggests it was central to the state religion. Perhaps oaths were sworn upon it, or libations poured over its cool surface, directly connecting the ritual to the raw essence of the earth or the sky. The Hattusa green stone resists narrative. It offers no story, only presence. It is a blank screen onto which we project our theories about Hittite belief, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful sacred objects are the ones that say the least and mean the most. The silent green stone in the temple embodied divine power, but the empire's daily strength relied on a more practical magic, the written word. Far from the capital's sacred center, at a remote outpost called Magat Huryuk, a trove of clay tablets was unearthed, offering a raw, unfiltered view of imperial rule on the edge of civilization. This was not a royal archive boasting of treaties, but a provincial governor's filing cabinet, crammed with the gritty paperwork of frontier management. The letters, written in cuneiform, crackle with immediacy and tension. We read frantic dispatches about Kaska tribesmen raiding border villages, reports of suspicious travelers who might be spies, and urgent requests for military reinforcements to put down a local rebellion. This is the sound of an empire listening intently to its outermost whispers, a nervous system stretched thin across rugged highlands. The governor of Magat, whose name we can now read, corresponded directly with the great king in Hattusa, detailing shortages of grain, disputes over land rights, and the constant, low-grade anxiety of a territory that was never fully pacified. Yet within this chronicle of crisis, we see the brilliant machinery of Hittite control. Every report is met with a precise, measured response from the capital. The king doesn't just send soldiers, he sends specific instructions on how many troops, from which garrison, and under whose command. He allocates exact amounts of silver to pay for local alliances and orders careful censuses of livestock to assess war damages. This archive reveals an empire that governed through information, transforming chaos into data. The mystery hidden in these bureaucratic letters is a psychological one. They show an imperial periphery that was perpetually simmering, a place where loyalty was negotiated daily and control was a fragile illusion maintained through relentless administration. Why did the Hittites invest so much in such a troublesome region? The answer lies in what Magat protected: vital trade routes and access to the precious metal mines of the Black Sea region. The nervous energy in these tablets is the cost of doing business, the price of empire. They force us to abandon any romantic notion of absolute Hittite dominion, replacing it with a far more realistic picture of a superpower engaged in a never-ending, exhausting, and brilliantly systematic game of whack-a-mole across its vast and restless frontiers. The nervous dispatches from the frontier fade into a scene of serene devotion carved into a distant cliff face. High in the remote highlands of southern Cappadocia, far from the bustling capitals or strategic mountain passes, the Fracton relief presents a startlingly intimate portrait of Hittite royalty. Here, etched into the living rock, a king and queen stand side by side, not in martial pose but in an act of quiet worship. The king, identifiable by his pointed helmet, raises a libation vessel toward a much larger, seated figure of a deity, likely the storm god who holds a cup of his own. The queen, her status clear from her long robe and distinctive cylindrical headdress, stands respectfully behind her husband, a silent partner in this sacred dialogue. The composition is balanced, peaceful, and deeply personal, a frozen moment of direct communion between the rulers and the divine. Its remote location, away from major cities or roads, is the first clue to its profound mystery. This was not a public monument for propaganda, so why here? The isolation suggests this spot was inherently sacred. perhaps a natural spring or a grove long associated with a local deity, a place where the royal couple came to make a private offering for the health of their family or the success of a personal endeavor. Alternatively, the surrounding land may have been a royal estate, a private retreat or agricultural holding belonging to this specific king and queen. The relief would then serve as a permanent marker of their piety and ownership, a claim staked not just on the land but on the favor of the god who watched over it. This introduces a tantalizing puzzle, for while the style is unmistakably Hittite, the specific royal couple remains anonymous. Is this the great Muwatalli and his queen, or perhaps his father Mursili II? Without an inscription, their identities are lost, transforming the relief from a historical record into a universal symbol of royal devotion. The fragment carving pulls back the curtain on the private lives of the mighty, revealing that beneath the trappings of state ritual and military command, the Hittite king and queen were also a couple who sought blessings at a lonely shrine, connecting their personal fate to the timeless landscape of their empire. These personal acts of devotion, however, were not confined to lonely rock faces. The most intimate connection between a Hittite family and their gods was likely forged in a quiet corner of the home, illuminated by the small, flickering flame of an oil lamp. Across the former empire, archaeologists have unearthed hundreds of tiny bronze figurines, each one a masterpiece of miniature casting. These are not the monumental statues of temples but personal treasures, small enough to hold in the palm of your hand. They depict a world in miniature, powerful storm gods standing with their lightning bolts, graceful stags captured mid-leap, mothers cradling infants, and humble worshippers with their hands clasped in perpetual prayer. The craftsmanship is often exquisite, capturing a sense of movement and personality in just a few inches of metal. These figurines were the centerpieces of household shrines, personal anchors to the divine. A family might place a figurine of a protective deity near the hearth, or a statuette of a fertility goddess in a bedchamber, creating a sacred space within the everyday. Many were also votive offerings carried to a temple or sacred spring and left there as a permanent metallic prayer. A farmer might offer a bronze bull to ensure his herd's health, or a merchant might dedicate a small god in thanks for a safe journey. Yet here lies a profound and charming mystery. While we understand their general purpose, the specific stories behind each one are lost. Vast numbers of these figurines were discovered not in homes or temples, but buried together in hoards, hidden for safekeeping during some forgotten crisis, or found alone in fields, perhaps lost by a traveler centuries ago. Without the context of their original placement, we cannot know which god a particular family favored, or what specific plea a certain offering was meant to carry. Was this stern warrior god figurine the cherished protector of a soldier's household? Was this elegant deer left at a forest shrine to honor a spirit of the hunt? This silence personalizes Hittite religion in a way the grand state monuments cannot. It shows us that faith was not just a matter of royal decrees and temple taxes, but of individual hope, fear, and gratitude. These small, silent bronzes give faces to the anonymous faithful, reminding us that the empire was ultimately made of countless private devotions, each one a tiny, gleaming thread in the vast tapestry of belief. While personal shrines held the gods close, the final journey of a Hittite elite was a spectacle of power meant to defy time itself. In the rugged mountains of eastern Anatolia, near the modern village of Lydia, a monumental tomb was carved directly into a cliff face. This was not a simple grave, but a statement in stone, a rock-cut chamber intended to house a ruler for eternity. Yet when archaeologists reached it, they found a scene of ancient violation. The tomb had been looted, probably in antiquity, its main chamber stripped of its most significant occupant and offerings. For a moment, it seemed the story had been stolen forever. But in the dusty corners and overlooked niches, a glimmer of treasure remained. Scattered and forgotten, the looters had left behind a hauntingly beautiful collection, a ghost of the original wealth. There were delicate gold pendants, some shaped into elegant leaves or discs, their surfaces etched with fine geometric patterns that caught the light. There were bronze weapons, spearheads and daggers, their blades still hinting at their lethal purpose despite the green patina of centuries. Most striking were the personal ornaments, intricate fibulae or brooches, used to fasten cloaks, crafted with a technical skill that spoke of a master metalsmith. The artistry of these objects tells a deeper story than their beauty alone. They are not purely Hittite in style. The designs show a fascinating fusion, blending classic Hittite motifs, like certain spiral patterns, with distinct elements from the Eurasian culture, a powerful kingdom that would later dominate this very region. This hybrid style is the tomb's central clue. It places Caelidea squarely on a cultural frontier, a place where the influence of the Hittite heartland met and mingled with strong local traditions. So who was worthy of such a monumental tomb and such rich grave goods? The looters took the body and any inscribed seal that might have given us a name, leaving us with a compelling puzzle. Was this the final resting place of a local chieftain who had sworn allegiance to the Hittite great king, adopting imperial symbols of status while maintaining his people's artistic flair? Or was it a tomb for a Hittite governor sent to rule this distant province, who in life had embraced local customs and artisans to strengthen his authority? The tomb itself, carved in the Hittite rock-cut tradition, argues for a strong imperial connection, but the treasures within whisper of a complex identity, of a ruler who navigated two worlds. This was not the core of the empire, but its vibrant, adaptable edge, where power was expressed through a deliberate blend of the familiar and the foreign. The looted silence of Caelidea speaks volumes about how the Hittite Empire managed its vast territories, not through cultural erasure, but through a strategic and beautiful fusion. This fusion of styles at the empire's edges was not just a political strategy, but an aesthetic one, creating objects of breathtaking beauty meant for the highest levels of society. Far to the south, in the ancient city of Alalak in what is now modern Syria, a single artifact was unearthed that perfectly captures this elegant reach of Hittite power. It is a shallow, wide-mouthed bowl, but not of clay or bronze. This vessel is crafted from pure, hammered gold, so thin and delicate it seems to hold light as much as it holds liquid. The true marvel, however, is its decoration. Using the repoussé technique, a master artisan worked from the inside, pushing the gold outwards to create a raised, dynamic scene that wraps entirely around the bowl's interior. We see a classic hunt in progress, a chariot pulled by galloping horses, its spoked wheels a blur of motion, bearing down on a fleeing stag. The lines are fluid and confident, the animals rendered with a keen observation of muscle and movement that feels alive even in precious metal. At first glance, this is a masterpiece of Hittite art, echoing the same vitality seen in their rock reliefs and seal carvings. Yet it was not found in Hattusa or any Anatolian capital. It was discovered here at Alalak, a prosperous Syrian city-state that existed within the sphere of Hittite influence, often as a vassal or a closely allied trading partner. This geographical dislocation is the bowl's central, shimmering mystery. Why does an object so quintessentially Hittite in style rest in a Syrian palace? The answer rewrites our map of ancient culture. For decades, scholars tended to draw neat lines on maps, assigning strict artistic styles to specific empires or ethnic groups. The Hittite style was for the Hittites, the Mitannian style for the Mitannians, and so on. This gold bowl shatters those artificial boundaries. Its presence at Alalak is powerful evidence of what we now call cultural diplomacy. It could have been a royal gift sent from a Hittite great king to a loyal Syrian ruler as a token of alliance and a symbol of shared elite taste. Alternatively, it might have been commissioned locally by a Syrian king who wanted to emulate the powerful aesthetic of his northern overlords, employing either imported Hittite craftsmen or local artisans expertly trained in the imperial style. In either case, the bowl speaks a silent language of prestige and connection. It tells us that the Hittite Empire's influence was not merely exercised through treaties and troops, but also through a shared visual language of power. To drink from this bowl was to participate in a cosmopolitan identity, to signal that you were part of a wider, interconnected world where the hunt scenes of Anatolia could be admired in a Syrian hall. It proves that artistic borders were far more porous than political ones, and that the true reach of an empire can be measured in the delicate hammer strokes on a cup of gold. That delicate gold bowl from a Syrian palace reveals an empire connected by shared symbols, but to understand the primal power at the very core of those symbols, we must return to the source. Back at Hattusa, guarding the southwestern approach to the city, stands a creature of pure, silent ferocity. This is the Lion Gate, and its sculpted sentinel is a masterpiece of controlled aggression. Carved from a single, massive block of stone, a lion emerges from the gate's right-hand pier, its body coiled in a permanent crouch, its mouth open in a soundless, eternal roar. Every muscle is taut, every claw defined, a perfect fusion of artistic skill and psychological warfare. This was not a decoration, it was the first and last impression of the Hittite capital for anyone approaching from that direction. The lion's symbolic role is clear. It was the ultimate guardian, a creature whose very nature embodied the protective and terrifying power of the state. In the ancient Near East, the lion was the king of beasts, an emblem of royal authority and unassailable strength. Placing one at the gate was a statement that the king's power was as natural and formidable as the lion's own, that he was the protector of the ordered city within and the vanquisher of the chaotic wilderness without. Yet, as with so much in Hittite culture, this straightforward interpretation only scratches the surface. A deeper mystery lingers in the stone. Were these lions simply generic symbols of royal might, or did they have a specific divine patron? Intriguing clues point to the lion's close association with the goddess Hebat, the powerful sun goddess of the heavens. In Hittite iconography, Hebat is frequently shown standing upon a lioness, and the lion itself was considered her sacred animal. This connection transforms the gate from a mere show of force into a potentially profound religious statement. The lion could be an extension of Hebat's own protective power, a divine guardian sanctioned by the goddess herself to watch over the city's threshold. This duality is the essence of Hittite symbolism. The earthly and the divine were never separate. The lion's roar was both the king's command and the goddess's decree. Its intimidating presence served a dual audience for foreign enemies and diplomats. It was a blunt warning of the military might awaiting them. For the Hittite citizens returning home, it was a reassuring sign that their world was safeguarded by forces both royal and celestial. The mystery of its specific meaning may never be fully resolved, and that is perhaps the point. The Lion Gate sculpture works on every level it needed to, speaking a universal language of power to the foreigner, a nuanced language of faith to the initiate, and an unwavering promise of security to all who lived within the shadow of its stone roar. The lion's roar at the gate was a public declaration, but the true voice of the storm god often spoke in more intimate spaces. Within the administrative heart of Shapanuva, the second capital, amid the thousands of bureaucratic tablets, archaeologists found a small, powerful contradiction. It is a bronze statuette just over a foot tall, depicting the supreme Hittite deity, Teshub, the storm god. He stands rigid and imposing, his conical hat marking his divine status, one arm raised as if to hurl the weapon he once held. Beneath his feet, supporting him, are not mountains but the bowed figures of two bulls, their powerful forms rendered in miniature. This is the classic iconography of Teshub, the master of weather, fertility, and raw power, yet its context is what makes it extraordinary. This was not a monumental statue from a grand temple cella, but a portable cult image, small enough to be carried in a procession or placed in a secondary shrine. Its discovery in the ruins of Shapanuva solved one mystery while deepening another. The sheer volume of tablets had already proven this was a major administrative center, but this statuette confirmed beyond any doubt that it was also a place of supreme religious significance. A city that housed an image of the chief god was no mere provincial office, it was a sacred seat of power. Yet the intimacy of the object suggests a faith that traveled. This teshub could be moved, perhaps accompanying a traveling king or a military campaign, bringing the protective presence of the empire's patron deity directly to the front lines or to a newly conquered region. It represents the personalization of imperial religion. While the state sponsored massive ceremonies at Yazilikaya and the Great Temple, this small bronze figure allowed for a more direct, perhaps even private, connection to the divine. Did a governor keep it in his quarters to seek guidance before sending a dispatch to the king? Was it used in field rituals by generals before battle, a tangible piece of home and divine favor on a distant frontier? The statuette bridges the gap between the colossal, state-managed cosmos and the individual human need for assurance. It reveals that the Hittites believed their gods were not fixed in place, but mobile and responsive, capable of being summoned into the heart of daily governance and personal crisis through a figure small enough to hold in your hands. This portable power made the divine an active participant in every decision, from the fate of the empire to the success of a harvest in a remote valley. But a portable god could not save a world that was unraveling. The final artifact is not a single object, but an absence, a chilling silence that fell over the Anatolian highlands around 1200 BC. The Hittite Empire, a superpower of treaties and temples, vanished from history. Its cities were not just conquered, they were abandoned, left to the wind and weeds. The last of our 25 mysterious witnesses are the clay tablets from Hattusa and Shapanuva that chronicle the empire's final, desperate years. They do not tell a simple story of a single battle lost. Instead, they whisper of a perfect storm of disasters, a cascade of failures that brought a giant to its knees. One set of tablets records crippling, multi-year famines. Another details urgent, increasingly frantic requests for grain shipments from Egypt, their former rival, now a potential lifeline. The very diplomacy that built the empire was now pleading for bread. At the same time, other dispatches speak of waves of mysterious invaders, often called the Sea Peoples in Egyptian records, attacking the coasts and disrupting the vital trade networks that were the empire's economic backbone. And perhaps most damning, there are hints of internal rebellion, of powerful vassal states and provincial governors sensing the center's weakness and breaking away. The artifacts present a forensic picture of systemic collapse. The magnificent reliefs and treaties show us an empire at its height, but these final tablets show the scaffolding buckling under immense strain. So what delivered the final blow? Scholars have debated for a century, and the artifacts point to three intertwined culprits. The first is the external shock of the Sea Peoples, a confederation of migratory groups whose exact origins remain debated, but whose destructive impact across the eastern Mediterranean is undeniable. They may have been both a cause and a symptom of the wider Bronze Age collapse, a chaotic force that overwhelmed already fragile states. The second, and perhaps most profound, theory is climate change. Tree ring and sediment core data from the region suggest a prolonged, severe drought during this exact period. Those famines mentioned in the tablets were not bad luck, they were likely a climate catastrophe. A drought would have devastated the agricultural surplus that fed the cities, the armies, and the vast bureaucracy, leading to social unrest, mass migrations, and the inability to respond to external threats. The third theory focuses on internal fragmentation. The very system of vassal treaties and distant capitals that gave the empire flexibility may have become its weakness under pressure. As famine bit and invaders pressed, local loyalties dissolved. The king in Hattusa could no longer command obedience or deliver protection, so provinces simply went their own way, fracturing the empire from within. The truth likely lies in the terrible synergy of all three. A changing climate sparked famine and migration. The migrations became invasions that strained military resources, and the strain broke the political bonds holding the complex imperial system together. The last Hittite king simply had no answers left. The green stone in the temple was ignored, the liver models gave only bad omens, and the silver hand of God poured its last libation. The people of Hattusa eventually walked away from their mighty, lion-guarded city, leaving the sphinxes to watch over nothing but silence. These 25 artifacts are more than a list of treasures. They are the fragments of a lost world, pieces of a puzzle that, when assembled, show us the entire arc of human endeavor, the rise, the glory, and the fall. They tell a story of brilliant adaptation and catastrophic vulnerability, a reminder that even the greatest empires are conversations with their environment, their neighbors, and themselves, conversations that can tragically end. Their world ended in fire, famine, and silence, but their story was never truly lost. It was patiently waiting in the clay, in the stone, in the glint of gold and silver. For centuries, the Hittites were a phantom, a name without a face, a footnote in someone else's history. But these 25 artifacts, these silent witnesses, refused to stay buried. Each one, from the colossal sphinxes at the gate to the final, desperate famine tablets, chipped away at our ignorance. They did not simply add facts to a timeline, they painted an entire civilization in vivid, unexpected color. We saw them not as barbaric warriors, but as master diplomats who could craft a lasting peace. We met them as devout worshippers who read the cosmos in a sheep's liver and carved their gods into mountain sanctuaries. We witnessed their private fears in frontier dispatches and their public grandeur in shimmering gold bowls. Each mystery solved revealed 3 more, proving that the Hittite world was far richer, more complex, and more human than we ever imagined. This is the beautiful, endless engine of archaeology. It is not a science of definitive answers, but of persistent questions. Every artifact is a conversation starter with the past, a fragment that challenges our assumptions and forces us to look again. The Hittites teach us that history is not a static record of kings and battles, but a living puzzle built from treaties and trade goods, from royal propaganda and personal prayer. Their legacy is a reminder that entire worlds can be forgotten, and then, piece by patient piece, remembered. So now we turn the question to you. After this journey through their lost empire, which of these 25 mysterious artifacts captured your imagination the most? Was it the pragmatic peace of the Kadesh Treaty, the eerie divination of the liver models, or the lonely, beautiful devotion of the Fracton relief? Let us know your thoughts and your own theories down in the comments. If you enjoyed unearthing the secrets of this forgotten superpower, be sure to subscribe and join us for more deep dives into the mysteries that shaped our world. The past is full of stories waiting to be told, and the next discovery is always just beneath the surface.